The Galactic Assembly had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 37 species had come together to form this great council. They made laws. They kept peace. They decided which new species could join them, and which ones could not. On a cold morning in the station orbiting Kepler Prime, the Assembly gathered for an emergency meeting. The Great Hall was filled with creatures of every shape and size. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had shells that clicked when they moved. They all sat in their assigned seats and waited for the speaker to begin. Ambassador Vexenar of the Dralith Collective slithered to the center platform. He was a tall, serpent-like creature with dark green scales and yellow eyes that never blinked. His species had been part of the Assembly for 8,000 years. They were proud. They were powerful. And today, they had brought important news. Fellow members of the Assembly, Vexenar began, his forked tongue flicking as he spoke. Our scouts have found a new species on a small planet in a distant arm of the galaxy. They call their world Earth. They call themselves humans. A murmur went through the crowd. New species were always interesting. Some became allies. Some became trading partners. Some became problems. "Show us," demanded High Chancellor Mortek, a massive creature covered in thick gray hide. His species, the Gorthik, had helped found the Assembly long ago. Vexenar pressed a button on his platform. A hologram appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. Then it zoomed in to show cities, roads, and billions of small creatures walking on two legs. "They are primitive," Vexenar continued. "They have not yet learned to travel between stars. But our scientists have studied them carefully. They are violent. They fight wars among themselves constantly. They kill their own kind over small differences in belief and appearance." The Assembly members shifted in their seats. Violence was common in the galaxy, but most species had learned to control it long ago. "There is more," Vexenar said. "They breed at an alarming rate. Their population has grown from 1 billion to 8 billion in just 200 years. And they are clever. Our projections show they will develop interstellar travel within 2 centuries. Now the murmuring became louder. A violent species that bred quickly and would soon reach the stars. This was concerning news indeed. "What do you propose?" asked Ambassador Zithra of the Nathari, an insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light like jewels. Vexenar's tongue flicked again. "I propose we deal with this threat before it becomes unmanageable. I propose we conquer Earth. I propose we enslave the humans." The hall went silent. Slavery was not unknown to the Assembly. They had done it before to species they deemed dangerous. It was considered a mercy compared to the alternative. "They are too primitive to contribute to our society as equals," Vexenar explained. "But they have strong bodies. They can work. They can serve. And most importantly, they can be controlled." High Chancellor Mortek stood. His massive frame cast a shadow over half the hall. "We will vote. All those in favor of conquering Earth and enslaving its population, raise your appendage." One by one, every species in the hall voted yes. Tentacles rose. Claws extended. Wings spread. 37 species united in their decision. Earth would fall. Humanity would serve. Far away, on the planet that had just been condemned, Daniel Carter was finishing his shift at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. He was a simple man with simple dreams. He worked hard. He paid his bills. He hoped to save enough money to buy a small boat someday. The sky was clear that evening as Daniel walked to his truck. He noticed some people pointing upward and stopped to look. At first, he thought it was a plane. Then he thought it was many planes. Then he realized it was something else entirely. The ships were enormous. Each one was larger than any city Daniel had ever seen. They descended through the clouds like mountains falling from heaven. Their shadows blocked out the setting sun. Daniel stood frozen as the world changed around him. Car alarms began to wail. People screamed and ran. Somewhere in the distance, he heard explosions. His phone buzzed. It was his sister calling. He answered, but could not hear over the noise. He could only stand and watch as humanity's freedom came to an end. In Nevada, Katie Morgan was working late at her research facility. She was a young engineer, just 28 years old. With brown hair she always kept tied back and glasses she was always losing. She loved her job. She loved solving problems. She had no idea that the biggest problem of her life was about to begin. The alarms started first. Then the power went out. Then the ceiling collapsed. When Katie woke up, she was in a line of people being marched toward a massive alien ship. Armed creatures walked beside them, pushing anyone who moved too slowly. A woman next to Katie was crying. A man in front was praying. Katie just kept walking, her engineer's mind already working on the problem of survival. They put metal collars around their necks. Katie felt the cold device press against her skin and heard it click locked. A guard told them in broken English that the collar would kill them if they tried to remove it or disobey. The conquest of Earth took 72 hours. Every government surrendered. Every military was defeated. 8 billion humans became property of the Galactic Assembly, but not everyone was captured. In the mountains of Colorado, Admiral Nathan Cole had been on a camping trip when the invasion began. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that had seen 3 wars. He had planned to retire next month. Instead, he found himself leading what remained of the resistance. They gathered in an old mining facility deep underground. Soldiers who had escaped capture. Scientists who had been in remote locations. Civilians who had simply been lucky. 300 people in total, all that remained of human freedom. Admiral Cole stood before them in the dim light of emergency lanterns. Outside, alien ships patrolled the skies. Above, humanity suffered in chains. But here, in this dark hole in the ground, hope still lived. "They think they have won," he said, his voice calm and steady. "They think we are beaten. They look at us and see animals to be broken, workers to be used, a problem to be solved." He paused and looked at each face in the crowd. He saw fear. He saw anger. He saw grief. But he also saw something else. He saw fire. "They've made the greatest mistake in galactic history," Admiral Cole continued. "They have taken everything from us. Our homes, our families, our freedom. They think this makes us weak." He clenched his fist. "They are wrong. They have not broken us. They have united us. They have not made us weak. They have made us angry. And they have no idea at all, what a human being can do when they are angry." The people before him straightened. Some nodded. Some wiped tears from their eyes. All of them listened. "We are the last spark," Admiral Cole said. "The last ember of a fire they think they have put out. But embers can grow. Embers can spread. And when the time is right, embers can burn down everything." He raised his hand. "We call ourselves the Ember. And one day, we will make them pay for what they have done." In the darkness of that underground bunker, 300 voices rose in agreement. The resistance had begun. 5 years passed under alien rule. The world that humans had known was gone. Cities had become work camps. Families had been torn apart. Children grew up knowing nothing but slavery. The Galactic Assembly divided Earth into sectors. Each of the 37 species that had voted for enslavement received a piece of the planet. They took what they wanted. They worked the humans until they dropped. Millions died from exhaustion, hunger, and the casual cruelty of masters who did not see their slaves as real beings. Daniel, Carter had been assigned to the Dralith mining operation in what was once West Virginia. The mountains he had loved as a child were now hollow shells, their insides ripped out to feed the alien hunger for rare minerals. Every day, Daniel woke at dawn. Every day, he walked into the dark tunnels with thousands of other humans. Every day, he swung his pickaxe until his arms burned and his back screamed. Every night, he collapsed onto a thin mat in a crowded barracks and tried not to think about the life he had lost. But Daniel was doing more than just surviving. He was watching. He was learning. He was remembering. The Dralith guards were lazy. They believed humans were stupid animals, barely smart enough to follow simple commands. They talked freely in front of their slaves, never thinking that some of those slaves understood their language. Daniel had learned Dralith in secret, listening to guards chat during their shifts. He knew their patrol schedules. He knew where they kept their weapons. He knew which guards were cruel and which were merely indifferent. He stored every piece of information in his mind, like a squirrel storing nuts for winter. At night, when the guards were not watching, Daniel whispered to other prisoners. He found people he could trust. He passed messages through a network of careful words and hidden signals. The information traveled from camp to camp, from sector to sector, across the entire planet. In Nevada, Katie Morgan had been luckier than most. The Netheri, insectoid creatures who prized efficiency above all else, had recognized her engineering skills. Instead of sending her to the fields or the mines, they put her to work maintaining their equipment. Katie spent her days repairing alien machines. She learned how their technology worked. She memorized circuit patterns and power systems. She discovered that the collar around her neck, the device that could kill her with a single command, had a weakness. The collars were controlled by a central signal. If that signal could be disrupted, even for a moment, the collars would go dead. Katie did not know how to disrupt the signal yet, but she knew it was possible, and she kept that knowledge hidden deep in her heart, waiting for the right moment. The Netheri trusted her. They gave her access to systems and facilities that other humans never saw. They never suspected that every night, after her shift ended, Katie drew diagrams from memory and hid them beneath a loose stone in her sleeping quarters. In the mountains of Colorado, the ember had grown. What began as 300 desperate survivors had become a network of thousands. They hid in abandoned mines, forgotten bunkers, and remote valleys that the aliens had not bothered to patrol. Admiral Nathan Cole led them with patience and wisdom. He knew they could not fight yet. The aliens were too strong, too numerous, too advanced. Any open rebellion would be crushed in hours. So instead, they waited. They planned. They prepared. Dr. Marcus Webb had been a physicist before the invasion. Now he was the Ember's chief scientist, working with salvaged alien technology and whatever human equipment they could find. He searched for a way to disable the collars. The signal comes from orbital stations, he explained to Admiral Cole one evening. Each station controls millions of collars. If we could jam the signal, even for a few minutes, we could free everyone in range. Can you build a jammer? Cole asked. Webb nodded slowly. I think so, but I will need parts. Alien parts. Things we cannot make ourselves. Cole turned to Laura Chun, a former intelligence officer who now ran the Ember's spy network. Can we get what he needs? Laura smiled grimly. We have people in every sector. If it exists, we can steal it. The theft operation took months. Small parts disappeared from alien warehouses. Components went missing from repair shops. Nothing large enough to attract attention, just tiny pieces that added up over time. Meanwhile, the Ember recruited more members. They found soldiers hiding in the wilderness. They made contact with prisoners who had proven their loyalty. They even turned a few alien collaborators, humans who had agreed to work for their masters in exchange for better treatment. One of these collaborators was a man named Gregory Palmer. He had taken a job as a translator for the Gorthak Sector Command. The other humans in his camp hated him. They spat when he walked by. They called him traitor and worse, but Gregory was no traitor. He had taken the job because the Ember had asked him to. Every week, he passed information about Gorthak troop movements to a contact in the cleaning staff. Every document that crossed his desk was memorized and reported. The aliens trusted him completely, and that trust would be their downfall. In the 5th year of occupation, Dr. Webb finally completed his work. In the dim light of an underground laboratory, he held up a device no larger than a shoebox. "This is it," he said. "The jammer. When activated, it will disable every caller within 300 miles. But there is a problem." Admiral Cole leaned forward. "What problem?" "Range," Webb said. 300 miles is not enough to free the whole planet. We would need dozens of these devices, placed in precise locations, all activated at exactly the same moment. "Can we build more?" "Yes, but it will take time. At least another year." Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Then we take another year. We have waited 5 years already. What is one more?" But building the jammers was only half the challenge. The Ember also needed weapons. They needed vehicles. They needed a plan to take down an enemy that had conquered the entire planet in 3 days. Lavra Chun worked with former military officers to develop strategy. They studied alien patrol patterns. They identified weak points in the occupation. They found hidden locations where weapons could be manufactured without detection. In abandoned coal mines, humans built railguns using principles that alien technology had never considered. In forest camps, they assembled EMP devices that could knock out alien electronics. In underwater bases off the coast of what was once Maine, they constructed small atmospheric fighters from salvaged parts. The aliens never noticed. They were too confident, too certain of their superiority. To them, humans were animals. Clever animals, perhaps, but animals all the same. The idea that their slaves were building an army right under their noses never occurred to them. Daniel Carter became one of the Ember's key operatives in the mining sectors. He organized cells of trusted workers. He taught them how to communicate without being detected. He prepared them for the day when the signal would come. Katie Morgan established contact with the Ember through a maintenance worker who served as a courier. She shared everything she had learned about alien technology. Her diagrams and notes were copied and distributed throughout the network. Engineers in every sector studied her work and improved upon it. By the end of the 5th year, the Ember had grown to over 50,000 active members. They had jammers positioned across 6 continents. They had weapons hidden in 1,000 locations. They had plans for simultaneous uprisings in every sector on Earth. Admiral Cole gathered his inner circle for a final planning session. Lavra Chun was there. Dr. Webb was there. A dozen other leaders, each responsible for a different aspect of the operation, filled the small room. "We have one chance," Cole said. "One moment when the callers go dead and the aliens do not expect resistance. If we fail, they will kill us all. There will be no second attempt." He looked around the room at the tired, determined faces. 5 years of slavery. 5 years of suffering. 5 years of patient, careful preparation. "But we will not fail," he continued, "because we are not fighting for territory or resources or power. We are fighting for our freedom, for our families, for every human being who has ever been whipped, starved, or worked to death by these creatures." He placed his hand on the table. "In 1 month, we begin. In 1 month, the Ember becomes a fire. And that fire will burn across this planet and beyond." The leaders nodded. The plan was set. After 5 years in chains, humanity was ready to break free. The signal came at midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. It was a simple pulse, broadcast on a frequency the aliens had never bothered to monitor. The old emergency broadcast system, the one humans had used to warn each other about storms and disasters, carried a different message now. Freedom. Across the planet. Jammers activated simultaneously. In mines and factories, in fields and camps, millions of color devices went dark at the same instant. The red lights that had glowed for 5 years suddenly turned off. For one precious moment, the aliens did not understand what had happened. They looked at their control screens and saw error messages. They checked their equipment and found no problems. They assumed it was a technical failure that would fix itself. That moment was all humanity needed. Daniel Carter had been waiting for this night for 5 years. He stood in the darkness of the West Virginia mine, surrounded by thousands of workers who had become soldiers in secret. When the collar around his neck went dead, he felt a weight lift that was heavier than the metal itself. Now, he said, the workers had hidden their weapons carefully. Pickaxes sharpened to deadly points. Metal bars wrapped in cloth to muffle sound. Rocks collected over months and stored in hidden places. Nothing that would look suspicious to a casual observer. Everything that could kill. The Dralith guards were caught completely off guard. They had grown comfortable in their role as masters. They had forgotten that the creatures they whipped and starved were the same species that had conquered its own planet through war after war. Daniel led the charge himself. The sector commander, a serpentine creature named Voshrak, who had ordered hundreds of executions, slithered out of his quarters to investigate the commotion. He found Daniel waiting for him with a pickaxe raised. "What is the meaning of this?" Voshrak demanded. "Return to your barracks immediately or face punishment." Daniel smiled. It was not a nice smile. "The punishment is for you." The pickaxe came down. Voshrak died with a look of complete surprise on his face. He had never imagined that a human could raise a hand against a Dralith. Across the mine complex, similar scenes played out. Guards were overwhelmed by workers they had abused for years. Weapons were seized. Facilities were captured. Within 2 hours, the entire sector was under human control. In Nevada, Katie Morgan led her own uprising. She had spent months preparing for this moment, identifying which systems to target and which allies she could trust. The Nethari power station was the key. It provided energy not just to the local occupation force, but to 3 cruisers orbiting directly overhead. If she could capture it, she could turn its weapons against the aliens themselves. Katie and her team moved through the facility like ghosts. They knew every corridor, every access point, every security camera. They had learned the routines of every guard. When the collars went dead, they struck with perfect precision. The Nethari were efficient creatures, but they were not warriors. They had relied on their technology to control their slaves. Without the collars, without the threat of instant death, they were vulnerable. Katie reached the main control room to find the Nethari commander, frantically trying to restore the collar signal. He looked up as she entered, his compound eyes widening in recognition. "You," he said. "The engineer. What are you doing?" "Taking back what is ours," Katie replied. She had spent years learning their systems. Now she used that knowledge to lock the Nethari out of their own controls. She rerouted power to the station's defensive weapons. She aimed them at the sky. The first cruiser never saw it coming. The beam cut through its hull like a knife through paper. It fell burning through the atmosphere, lighting up the night like a second sun. The second cruiser tried to evade. It managed to avoid the first shot. It did not avoid the second. It broke apart in orbit, raining debris across the Nevada desert. The third cruiser turned to flee. Katie tracked it with calm precision. She fired once. The cruiser exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from 100 miles away. Around the world, The uprising spread like fire. In South America, workers seized control of a Gorthok agricultural complex and used its heavy equipment to crush the guards who had beaten them. In Africa, prisoners overwhelmed a Nethari mining operation and captured enough weapons to arm a small army. In Asia, resistance cells that had been dormant for years rose up and took control of 3 major cities in a single night. The aliens tried to respond. They sent troops to put down the rebellions. They launched ships to bomb the insurgents. But they were fighting on 1,000 fronts at once against an enemy they had never taken seriously. Admiral Nathan Cole coordinated the uprising from his underground command center in Colorado. Reports flooded in from every continent. Victories, losses, opportunities, threats. He processed them all with the calm efficiency of a man who had spent his entire life preparing for war. Sector 7 reports full control, Lavrichan announced. Sector 12 is still fighting but expects victory within hours. Sector 23 has captured an intact Dralith battleship. Cole nodded. Tell Sector 23 to hold that ship at all costs. We need it. Commander Tyler Brooks led the team that had captured the battleship. He was a former Navy pilot, 35 years old, with quick reflexes and quicker thinking. When the uprising began, he had led a strike team of 200 fighters against a Dralith landing facility. The battle had been fierce. The Dralith were not easy opponents. They were stronger than humans, faster than humans, and their scales could turn aside most blades. But they had never faced humans who had nothing to lose. Tyler had lost 40 soldiers taking the facility. He had lost another 20 capturing the battleship. But now, standing on the bridge of an alien warship, he felt something he had not felt in 5 years. Hope. Can we fly this thing? He asked the engineer beside him. Give me an hour, the engineer replied. These systems are not that different from what Katie Morgan described in her reports. Tyler smiled. You have 30 minutes. We have a war to win. On Kepler Prime, the Galactic Assembly watched their conquest fall apart. Species that had ruled the stars for millennia stared at their screens in disbelief. Humans, the primitive animals they had enslaved, were fighting back. And winning. Ambassador Vexinar sent a desperate message to the Assembly. Send reinforcements immediately. The situation has become uncontrollable. The humans are more dangerous than we anticipated. High Chancellor Mortok convened an emergency session. The 37 species that had voted to enslave humanity now debated what to do next. We must crush this rebellion, Vexinar argued. Send our full military force. Destroy their cities. Kill every human who raises a weapon against us. That will take time, Ambassador Zithra of the Nethari pointed out. And resources. We are already losing ships faster than we can replace them. Then we do not need to preserve them as slaves, Mortok said slowly. If they cannot be controlled, they must be eliminated. The hall went quiet. Genocide was not unprecedented in galactic history, but it was always considered a last resort, a sign that the Assembly had failed to solve a problem through other means. You propose to kill 8 billion beings? Asked a delegate from the Vorn Collective, a peaceful species that had always been uncomfortable with slavery. I propose to protect the galaxy, Mortok replied. These humans are a disease. If we do not cut them out now, they will spread. They will come for us. They will destroy everything we have built. The vote was called. Once again, the Assembly was unanimous. Humanity would be exterminated. Every man, woman, and child on Earth would die, but the Assembly had made another miscalculation. They thought they had time. They thought the humans would wait for the extermination fleet to arrive. They thought the animals would stay on their planet and die quietly. They were wrong. Admiral Cole received word of the Assembly's decision through captured communications. He read the message twice, then folded it and put it in his pocket. "They are coming to kill us all," he said to his officers. "They will arrive in approximately 6 weeks with enough firepower to glass the entire planet." The room was silent. Fear hung in the air like smoke. "Then, we do not wait," Cole continued. "We have captured 17 alien vessels in the past 48 hours. We have crews training to operate them as we speak. We have weapons we built ourselves and weapons we took from our enemies." He stood tall, his blue eyes burning with determination. "They voted to enslave us. They voted to exterminate us. Now we take the war to them. We will make them understand that humanity does not wait to be killed. Humanity fights back." Tyler Brooks and his battleship were the first to leave Earth's atmosphere. Behind him came 16 other captured vessels, crewed by humans who had learned to fly alien ships in days instead of years. The extermination fleet was coming, but humanity was not going to be there when it arrived. Humanity was going to meet it halfway, and the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to destroy a species that refused to die. The United Earth Fleet consisted of 17 captured ships and 23 vessels, built in secret during the years of slavery. It was a small force compared to the armadas of the Galactic Assembly, but it was crewed by humans who had survived 5 years of hell. They had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Admiral Nathan Cole established his command aboard the captured Dralith battleship, now renamed Defiance. It was a fitting name for a ship that represented everything the aliens had failed to understand about humanity. "Set course for the Dralith homeworld," Cole ordered. "They wanted to enslave us first. They can be first to fall." The journey took 3 weeks. During that time, the crew trained constantly. They learned every system on the alien ships. They practiced combat maneuvers. They prepared for the battle that would decide the fate of their species. Daniel Carter had been promoted to general after his actions during the uprising. He now commanded the ground forces that would invade the Dralith homeworld. Standing on the observation deck of the Defiance, he watched the stars streak past and thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. 5 years ago, he had been a simple worker at a naval shipyard. Now he was leading an army against the creatures who had enslaved his people. Life had a strange way of changing plans. "Nervous?" asked a voice behind him. Daniel turned to find Katie Morgan standing there. She had been appointed Chief Technical Officer of the fleet after her actions at the Nevada Power Station. Her knowledge of alien technology was unmatched by any other human. "A little," Daniel admitted. "We are about to attack a planet that has been part of the Galactic Assembly for 8,000 years. They have fleets. They have armies. They have weapons we have never even seen." Katie nodded. "They also have weaknesses. Every species does. We just have to find them." She handed him a data pad. On it was detailed information about Dralith biology, their military structure, and their defensive capabilities. Katie had spent the entire journey analyzing every piece of intelligence they had gathered. "They are cold-blooded," she explained. "Their metabolism slows dramatically in low temperatures. If we attack during their winter season, their soldiers will be sluggish, their reactions delayed." Daniel studied the data. Their homeworld has a 20-hour rotation. Winter in the northern hemisphere starts in 2 days. "Exactly," Katie said. "We time our assault to hit their capital during the coldest part of the night. They will not see us coming." The attack on the Dralith homeworld was devastating. Human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the capital city. Before the planetary defense systems could respond, orbital bombardment had destroyed their command centers and communication hubs. Daniel led the ground assault personally. 10,000 human soldiers descended on dropships, landing in the frozen streets of a city that had never known war. The Dralith military tried to organize a defense, but they were slow, confused, and completely unprepared for the fury of their former slaves. The battle lasted 3 days. The Dralith ruling council surrendered after their palace was surrounded by human forces. They had expected to negotiate from a position of strength. Instead, they found themselves prisoners in their own throne room. Daniel stood before the captured council members, his rifle slung over his shoulder. These were the same beings who had voted to enslave his people. The same beings who had ordered millions to their deaths. "You thought we were animals," he said quietly. "You thought we would break. You were wrong." The news of the Dralith defeat spread across the galaxy like a shock wave. A species that had been enslaved for 5 years had conquered one of the oldest members of the Assembly in 3 days. The impossible had happened, but Admiral Cole was not satisfied. One victory meant nothing if the rest of the Assembly could regroup and counterattack. The war had to continue. Katie Morgan worked around the clock analyzing the weaknesses of each species that had voted for humanity's enslavement. She developed weapons specifically designed to exploit their biological vulnerabilities. For the Nethari, she created sonic devices that disrupted their hive mind communication. Without the ability to coordinate, their military fell into chaos. Their homeworld surrendered after a single battle. For the Gorthic, she designed armor-piercing rounds that could penetrate their thick hides. The massive creatures who had relied on their natural armor for protection found themselves defenseless. Their military commanders sued for peace after losing half their fleet. One by one, the species of the Galactic Assembly fell. Some fought hard and lost. Some surrendered quickly, hoping for mercy. None could stand against the tide of human vengeance, but the war was not won by weapons alone. Dr. Marcus Webb had made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing captured assembly records, he found evidence of something the galaxy had tried to hide. The 37 species that ruled the stars had not always been alone. Dozens of other species had achieved spaceflight over the millennia. They had all been conquered, enslaved, and eventually absorbed into the assembly as servant races. These species had been broken so completely that they had forgotten they were ever free. They served their masters without question, without hope, without even the memory of what they had lost. Samantha Blake had survived the occupation by working as a translator for the aliens. She had learned 6 different galactic languages. Now she used that knowledge for a different purpose. Under Admiral Cole's orders, Samantha began reaching out to the servant races. She told them the truth about their history. She showed them records of their ancestors, free and proud, before the assembly had crushed them. She asked them a simple question: "Do you want to be free?" The response was overwhelming. Species that had served the assembly for thousands of years began to revolt. On 100 worlds, slave rebellions erupted. The great coalition that had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years began to tear itself apart from the inside. The assembly called emergency sessions to address the crisis. But the 37 ruling species could not agree on anything. Some wanted to negotiate with the humans. Some wanted to keep fighting. Some wanted to flee to distant corners of the galaxy and hope the storm would pass. Ambassador Vexinar, who had first proposed the enslavement of Earth, argued for continued resistance. "We cannot surrender to these creatures," he insisted. "They are primitive. They are violent. If we show weakness, they will destroy us all." But High Chancellor Mortok, who had ordered the extermination vote, was no longer so confident. His species had lost 3 fleets and 2 colony worlds. The Gorthic military, once the most powerful in the galaxy, was in ruins. "Perhaps we were wrong," Mortok said slowly. "Perhaps we underestimated them." "Underestimated?" Vexinar hissed. "We did not underestimate them. We simply failed to act quickly enough. If we had killed them all when we first found them, none of this would have happened. And yet here we are, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look. Admiral Nathan Cole stood in the doorway of the assembly hall, flanked by human soldiers. Behind him, the skies of Kepler Prime burned with the wreckage of the Assembly's defense fleet. "Your guards are dead or captured," Cole said calmly. "Your ships are destroyed. Your servant races have turned against you. This war is over." Mordak rose from his seat, his massive form towering over the human admiral. "You dare enter this hall? You dare threaten the Galactic Assembly?" Cole did not flinch. He had faced creatures larger than Mortak in the mines of Colorado. He had survived 5 years of slavery. He had conquered worlds. "I do not threaten," he said. "I inform. Every species in this room voted to enslave my people. Every species in this room voted to exterminate us when we fought back. You showed no mercy. You offered no negotiation. You treated us as animals to be broken or killed." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Now you will learn what that feels like." The trial of the Galactic Assembly lasted 3 months. Representatives from every species that had voted for humanity's enslavement were brought before a court of humans and liberated servant races. Evidence was presented. Testimonies were heard. Justice was served. Some species faced severe penalties. Their military capabilities were stripped away. Their governments were reformed. Their leaders were imprisoned for their crimes. Other species, those that had participated reluctantly or had treated their human slaves with some measure of decency, received lighter sentences. They were allowed to maintain their sovereignty under the supervision of a new governing body. But the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Assembly was dissolved. In its place, Admiral Cole and his allies began building something new. Something that would be founded not on conquest and slavery, but on freedom and cooperation. The species that had once ruled the stars now found themselves subject to the judgment of the creatures they had dismissed as animals. And humanity, which had been condemned to change just 5 years earlier, had become the most powerful force in the known universe. It was a victory beyond anything anyone had imagined. But the hardest work was still to come. Winning a war was one thing. Building a peace that would last was something else entirely. 10 years had passed since the liberation of Earth. The galaxy had been transformed beyond recognition. The Galactic Assembly no longer existed. In its place stood the Stellar Commonwealth, a new coalition founded on principles that humans had cherished for centuries. Freedom for all species, equal representation in government, self-determination for every world. These were not just words on a document. They were laws that governed the lives of trillions of beings across thousands of planets. Daniel Carter served as Earth's first ambassador to the Commonwealth. He walked through the halls of the new council chamber on a station that orbited a neutral star. Representatives from 100 worlds passed him as he walked. Many of them bowed their heads in respect, not because he was their master, because he had helped set them free. The council chamber was designed to be different from the old assembly hall. There was no elevated platform for the ruling species, no separate sections for masters and servants. Everyone sat together as equals, regardless of how many legs they had or what color their skin was. Daniel took his seat among the other ambassadors and prepared for another day of the slow, difficult work of building a new civilization. There were trade disputes to settle, border conflicts to resolve, reconstruction efforts to coordinate. The war had ended, but the peace required constant attention. Katie Morgan rarely attended council meetings. She was too busy with her work. As the chief architect of the Commonwealth's technological infrastructure, she oversaw projects that spanned the entire galaxy. New communication networks, improved transportation systems, Medical advances that had already saved millions of lives. Her office was cluttered with datapads, half-finished prototypes, and cups of cold coffee. She worked 18-hour days and loved every minute of it. After years of using her skills to survive slavery, she finally got to use them to build something better. A knock came at her door. She looked up to find an Athari engineer standing there, his compound eyes reflecting the light from her screens. "Dr. Morgan," he said, "I have completed the power efficiency calculations you requested. The new reactors will provide 30% more output than the old designs." Katie smiled. 10 years ago, this same species had put a collar around her neck. Now they worked alongside humans as partners. "Excellent work," she said. "Submit your findings to the review board. If everything checks out, we can begin construction next month." The Nethari bowed slightly and left. Katie watched him go, thinking about how much had changed. The insectoid beings who had once treated humans as clever tools now sought human expertise for their most important projects. The universe had a strange sense of humor. Admiral Nathan Cole had retired from military service 5 years after the war ended. He had done everything he could to build the Commonwealth, to establish the foundations of a lasting peace. Then he had handed over command to younger officers and gone home. His home was a small farm in Montana, on the same land his grandparents had worked before the invasion. He raised horses. He grew vegetables. He watched the sun rise over the mountains and tried to forget the things he had seen and done, but the past had a way of finding him. Delegations came regularly, representatives from species that had once enslaved humanity. They came to apologize, to explain, to ask for forgiveness. Cole received them all, though the conversations were rarely easy. On this particular morning, a Dralith vessel landed in the field behind his farmhouse. Cole watched from his porch as a single figure emerged and slithered up the path toward him. It was Ambassador Vexnar, the same serpentine creature who had stood before the Galactic Assembly all those years ago and argued for humanity's enslavement. The same being whose vote had condemned billions to suffering and death. Vexnar stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. His scales had lost some of their luster with age. His yellow eyes were clouded with something that might have been shame. "Admiral Cole," Vexnar said, lowering his body in the deepest gesture of submission his species knew. "I have come to ask for your mercy." Cole said nothing. He simply watched the creature who had caused so much pain. "I was wrong," Vexnar continued. "I was afraid. When we first saw your species, I saw only the violence, the conflict, the potential for destruction. I convinced myself that enslaving you was the right thing to do, that it was necessary for the safety of the galaxy." His voice trembled slightly. "I did not see you as people. I saw you as threats to be contained, animals to be controlled. I was blind to your worth, your dignity, your right to exist as free beings. I am sorry. I am so deeply sorry." Cole remained silent for a long moment. He thought about the mines in West Virginia. He thought about the millions who had died in the camps. He thought about children who had grown up in chains, never knowing what freedom felt like. He thought about everything humanity had lost. Then he thought about everything humanity had become. "Mercy," Cole said slowly, "is something you never showed us. Forgiveness is something you never considered when you cast your vote. You would have worked us to death and never felt a moment of guilt. You voted to exterminate us when we refused to stay enslaved." Vexnar trembled, waiting for the sentence of death he believed he deserved. "But that is the difference between us," Cole continued. "We are not what you tried to make us. We are not the violent animals you feared we would become. We are human. And humans, despite everything that was done to us, can still choose to forgive." He stood and walked down the steps until he was face to face with the creature who had once condemned his species. Then he did something that Vexnar had never expected. He extended his hand. "The past cannot be undone," Cole said. "The dead cannot be brought back. The suffering cannot be erased. But the future is unwritten, and I would rather spend that future building than destroying." Vexnar stared at the offered hand. In Drellith culture, physical contact between species was rare and significant. To accept this gesture would be to acknowledge Cole as an equal, a partner, a friend. Slowly, hesitantly, Vexnar raised one of his forelimbs and grasped Cole's hand. "I do not deserve this," he whispered. "No," Cole agreed. "You do not. But that is what forgiveness means. It is not earned. It is given. Now get up. There is work to be done." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Species that had voted for humanity's destruction came seeking admission to the Commonwealth. They had learned hard lessons about arrogance, about cruelty, about the cost of treating other beings as less than equals. Many humans struggled with forgiving their former masters. The wounds were too fresh, the memories too painful. There were protests, arguments, and bitter debates about whether the aliens deserved any mercy at all. But in the end, humanity chose a different path. Not because forgiving was easy, not because the aliens deserved it, but because holding on to hatred would have turned humans into the very thing the galaxy had feared they would become. Daniel Carter gave a speech before the Commonwealth Council on the 10th anniversary of liberation. Representatives from every species, including those who had enslaved humanity, listened as he spoke. 10 years ago, we were in chains. We were property. We were told that we were animals, that we had no rights, that our only purpose was to serve our betters. Every species in this room voted to make that happen. He paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of faces watching him. Today, we are free. Today, we are part of something greater than ourselves. Today, the species who enslaved us sit beside us as equals, protected by laws we helped write, prospering under a peace we helped build. His voice grew stronger. Some say we should have destroyed them. Some say we should have made them suffer as we suffered. But we chose differently. We chose to show the galaxy that humans are more than warriors, more than survivors, more than slaves. We are builders. We are healers. We are the species that looks at its enemies and sees potential allies. He raised his hand in a gesture that had become the symbol of the Commonwealth. This is our greatest victory. Not the battles we won, not the worlds we conquered, but the civilization we built from the ashes of the old one. A civilization where every species, no matter their past, has a chance to be free. The chamber erupted in applause. Humans, Drellith, Nethari, Gorthek, and 100 other species all cheered together. Former masters and former slaves, united in a vision of a better future. Katie Morgan watched from the gallery above. She had helped build the technology that made this civilization possible. But she knew that machines were not what held hope. Admiral Cole watched the speech from his farm in Montana, broadcast across a screen that had been a gift from a grateful Nethari delegation. He smiled as he watched Daniel speak, proud of the man he had become. The war had been necessary. The vengeance had been justified. But in the end, it was mercy that had truly won. The species that had voted to enslave Earth now lived under human protection. They thrived with human innovations. They prospered because humans had chosen not to become the monsters the galaxy had feared, and they would never forget the lesson humanity had taught them. That true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to forgive. That the measure of a species is not how they treat their enemies in victory, but how they lift them up after the fighting is done. Humanity had been tested by slavery and forged by war. But in the end, it was Ko,